Flying over the Velothi mountain range and looking down from 2 miles above the surface of Nirn,
it's impossible not to be impressed by the sheer grandeur and splendor and power of the world Todd Howard created. Single-handedly, no assistance needed at all.
In his great work, however, he made a mistake that will haunt the player base forever.
No, I am not talking about 16 times the detail. We all like 16 times the detail when we actually get it.
In 2024, during his 3-hour-long podcast, Dagoth only briefly addressed this issue because of the lack of time.
But today, much has changed.
We can now show life in Elsweyr in entirely new ways and bring you closer to the Khajiit than ever before. We can reveal new Khajiit dramas for the very first time. And that's not all. Elsweyr has changed as well. Never have those Khajiit been as dislikable as they are today. As Tamriel unites in their shared disdain of the Khajiit, we will journey to every corner of Elsweyr, explore the horrible sights and smells, and reveal the extreme lengths that the Khajiit go to survive.
This is CODEX Khajiit.
To choose the Khajiit on the character creation screen is to lose the game from the second it begins. Elsweyr, an ancient enigma. It is a cursed land, and quite possibly the strangest country in Tamriel today. Some may even say it is the most dangerous country to ever exist. In this god-forsaken land, the native beast folk, more colloquially known as the Khajiit, breeds out of control like a plague of mud crabs. Often defecating in the open with no regard for its native habitat, the Khajiit spreads across the face of this world like the Nahatan flu, consuming all in its path, while Tamriel watches on in agony and horror. With almost 15 million Khajiit and rising, Mother Nirn buckles under the terrible strain as these creatures rapidly multiply in their own filth, with seemingly no end in sight. Unlike any other cat species, they are incredibly unhygienic creatures. However, the Khajiit still manages to procreate and thrive in its horrible surroundings. Often mutated due to its toxic environment, the Khajiit wallows in ignorance and superstition. Its life is one of never-ending climb, never-ending defecation, and even more, never-ending delusion. To gaze at Elsweyr is like looking into the very mouth of oblivion itself. Mired in filth, the squalid conditions of Elsweyr are a blight on the once beautiful face of Mother Nirn. Every time a new Khajiit is born, she sheds a single tear. These tears rain down on the landscape as Tamriel cries out in agony. In its relentless march to destroy everything around it, the Khajiit litters its surrounding environment with a never-ending amount of trash and feces. One wonders, will there be any end to this horror? Some say that Elsweyr is the worst thing to ever happen. In the great tapestry of life, entropy weaves its inevitable thread. Decay, death, and decline are the silent architects of nature's order. Across the vast plains and teeming cities of Elsweyr, we witness a spectacle of devolution, where the balance of existence frays under the weight of relentless Khajiit overbreeding. Like a fungus spreading its tendrils across a rotting log, the Khajiit consumes all. It chokes the land and dims the vibrant chorus of life that once thrived here for millennium. Each Khajiit born, unchecked and unheeded, multiplies like spores of a relentless fungus smothering Nirn beneath a suffocating blanket. The Khajiit might be the end of everything. Elsweyr might be the worst thing to ever happen, and being a Khajiit might be the worst thing that could ever happen to anyone. Amid the festering misery and decay of Elsweyr, 130,000 new Khajiit are born each year. Enough to completely overwhelm the population of any civilized country. Every single one of these Khajiit is raised from birth to believe that they live in the greatest superpower to ever exist. Anyone with a brain could tell otherwise, but the Khajiit are cursed with an extraordinary delusion. Perhaps, though, this is a blessing in disguise. Such delusional mindset allows the Khajiit to delude himself and blame everyone else for the state of Elsweyr. The Imperials, Nords, or even the Dwemer. It is anyone else's fault but that of the Khajiit themselves. In their most delusional moments, the Khajiit will loudly exclaim to anyone that will listen that the Imperials looted Elsweyr
Of 45 trillion septims, a completely made-up figure with no basis in reality whatsoever.
Born with this innate and powerful sense of delusion, the Khajiit is well placed to learn the three essential pillars of the so-called civilization of Elsweyr: robbing, scamming, and pooping. Many Khajiit children begin their lives wallowing in their own filth and begging strangers for coins. Child beggar mafias operate in every major city in Tamriel, sending young Khajiit to beg, lie, steal, and pickpocket from adventurers and strangers. This essential skill of every Khajiit is mastered throughout their lives, with the hope that one day they can become high-ranking members of the Thieves' Guild and scam as many strangers as possible, and perhaps steal enough valuables so they can eventually flee their squalid conditions and move to a more civilized nation. Once in the civilized world, the Khajiit can continue scamming until he manages to convince someone rich enough and stupid enough to make him the supervisor of an ebony or orichalcum mining company. However, the Khajiit's path to adulthood is a perilous one. Many Khajiit never survive. Elsweyr is a dangerous place for females, be they women or children. If the Khajiit survives being born, it is subjected to bizarre rituals, such as baby tossing, to prepare it for its life in the harsh landscape of Elsweyr. After being stepped on, comes the traditional dipping of the Khajiit baby in boiling milk. This is then followed by dipping the Khajiit child in lion dung.
Elsweyr is a high-feces environment, and being able to withstand extreme exposure to fecal matter is an important part of the Khajiit's lifestyle.
If Khajiit children do not master being constantly immersed in fecal matter, they are unlikely to survive until adulthood. After the lion dung, the children are rinsed clean with lion urine. After being rinsed in urine, the Khajiit child is then offered to any wealthy adventurer. The Khajiit often claim that it doesn't happen in Elsweyr anymore. However, nobody should ever believe anything the Khajiit say. They are a beast folk famous for lying and scamming. They are totally incapable of any type of honesty and lie constantly. If the Khajiit child has survived this long without dying of disease, it is then often sent to a local market to be sold as a housemaid or farm tool. Although the Khajiit love to cope and tell everyone else their sister is hotter than Dwemer, the goddess of beauty and love herself, many of them grow up watching their 10-year-old sisters forced to work on the fields and in the houses of Imperial or Nord nobles. The Khajiit that aren't sold often go to school where they are further educated in the arts of cheating and scamming. Having survived the harsh challenges of childhood, the young Khajiit has now mastered the 3 pillars of the so-called civilization of Elsweyr: robbing, scamming, and pooping. They are now ready to move into their life as a mature Khajiit adult. Every day, the Khajiit wakes up in his run-down slum of an apartment and looks outside his window. Amidst the giant landfills of trash, so tall they need warning lights to prevent dragons crashing into them, the Khajiit can see his dreams of what he believes is the greatest country on Nirn. To anyone else, these scenes would be entirely reminiscent of the 2006 documentary Idiocracy. Giant mounds of burning trash dominate the landscape. However, in the Khajiit's mind, he lives in a highly technologically advanced superpower which dominates global trade and culture. Every day, he navigates through a hellish warren of dilapidated slums. To anyone else, this existence would be almost intolerable. But so delusional is the Khajiit, he convinces himself that others are jealous of his success. Elsweyr, he claims, is rapidly becoming a civilized country. However, anyone that has ever played any Elder Scrolls game can clearly see otherwise. The Khajiit wallows in his own filth. To him, the endless trash and garbage represents what it means to be quintessentially a part of Elsweyr. Quiet and cleanliness offends his sensibilities, and it is only when surrounded by trash and noise and stench that the Khajiit is truly in his element. In this scarred and desolate landscape, what little wildlife has survived ekes out a miserable and tortured existence. Stray goats struggle to find nutrition in what little grass remains, digging in between piles of trash to sustain themselves. Stray cows feast on whatever food they can find left in the toxic garbage. And the many stray dogs of Elsweyr struggle to survive in this dystopian hell. The Khajiit suffers from a deep inferiority complex, and he strikes out at the natural environment around him with an endless hatred. He is cruel, callous, and vindictive, and has no mercy for anything weaker than himself. The Khajiit destroys everything around him. He is like an orc warband, consuming the landscape and leaving nothing but death and garbage behind. He is the embodiment of all that is evil and wrong with this world. When he is not polluting the land with endless toxic trash, garbage, and feces, then he is polluting the skies. Smoke, smog, and air pollution spews from Elsweyr into the atmosphere due to land clearing. Of the top 5 most polluted cities in the world, 3 of them are in Elsweyr. The disgusting toxic pollution emanating from Elsweyr spreads and engulfs Mother Nirn. While other countries ban toxic materials and institute coal-related taxes, Elsweyr is covered in a thick, disgusting haze of pollution as the Khajiit callously destroys the atmosphere. He has no regard for nature or anything else around him. The Khajiit does not respect the sanctity of life or the natural world. The smog in the skies above Elsweyr is a physical manifestation of the Khajiit's black, soulless heart. They are driven only by endless anger, hate, and greed. They have no morals and no care for others. They can only rob, scam, and destroy all around them. If left unchecked, the Khajiit represents an environmental catastrophe and an extinction-level event akin to the one that wiped out the Dwemer. The goal of the Khajiit is to spread Elsweyr across the face of the world and turn everything into this toxic, polluted hell. When he is not polluting the land and air, he defiles the rivers and oceans. Elsweyr dumps 10,000 tons of toxic garbage into the ocean every single year. Non-biodegradable, this toxic pollution will be with us for hundreds of years, long after the Khajiit himself is gone. An enduring legacy of Elsweyr wrapped around Mother Nern's neck like a noose, slowly but surely choking her to death. Much like the garbage, the Khajiit's corpse is often cast into the river after he has died. Some say this barbaric tradition still occurs in Elsweyr to this day.
Elsweyr is still an incredibly primitive and barbaric country, despite any claim the Khajiit makes otherwise.
Once fully grown, the mature adult Khajiit is known as a cursed and often reviled species. Mocked by everyone around him, the Khajiit often spends his days shouting in delusional ways in the middle of the local forum or plaza, constantly trying to convince others that Elsweyr is, or will one day be, a superpower. Of course, most people don't fall for this ruse. The premise is entirely ridiculous after all. A dislikable but fascinating species, the Khajiit is widely known for several key characteristics. The first and foremost of these is its relatively low intelligence. Contrary to what they write about him in the Thalmor propaganda papers, with a median IQ of just 76.2, the Khajiit fails to impress with its limited cognitive functionality. For reference, other more evolved species, such as the noble orangutan, have been shown to have an IQ score ranging between 75 to 90. In comparison to this lofty intelligence, the Khajiit falls depressingly short. And although evidence is anecdotal at best, many believe that the orangutan has far better personal hygiene. However, this low intelligence score comes as no surprise. The Khajiit is well known for having the smallest brain of any of the Tamrielic species. The smallness of its brain is only rivaled by the equally small size of its reproductive organs. Cursed from birth to live a miserable existence, the Khajiit has the second smallest PP size of any of the many and varied races of cats on Nern today. Incredibly short and falling into a category known simply as little domestic or household cats, the average height of the Khajiit is a mere 5 foot 7 inches. Hardly impressive by any means. But shockingly enough, as the Khajiit destroys its native habitat, it is only getting shorter. In a few decades perhaps, they will be under 5 foot in height, perhaps even shorter. Stunningly unattractive, the Khajiit is the least desirable species of any male on Nern. And if given the choice, Khajiit females will choose literally almost any other partner. Indeed, in a practice known in Elsweyr as Love Warzuga, the female variety of the Khajiit species will often choose to copulate with and bear young to orcs of Orcrest. Due to female infanticide and the constant robbing and scamming of women and children in Elsweyr, there are 100,000 excess males in the country today. And this number is set to increase to 300,000 by the end of the decade. Faced with these facts, The Khajiit male will often fly into a terrible rage, expressing his displeasure in the middle of a local forum or plaza. These seething, angry virgins spend all day long shouting at anyone who points out the reality of Elsweyr. However, no matter how many times they repeat themselves, it will never change the reality we all live in. Nothing will ever change that.
The Khajiit live in an alternate reality, in a science fiction parallel universe where they believe that people only hate them out of jealousy.
Physically weak and incredibly clumsy, the Khajiit has seen Elsweyr invaded over 200 times. Having spent the past 800 years subjugated first by the Imperials and then by the Altmer, the Khajiit male is well accustomed to being dominated by other males. Plagued by constant misfortune in all areas of life, even the nomenclature used by the Khajiit in their primitive dialects makes them sound absolutely ridiculous. With names like hairy balls and suck-deep dick-shit, it is no wonder that so very many females of the Khajiit species choose to cheat on their partners. Perpetually unlucky in love, the Khajiit is rejected by almost all women. The majority of women consider these virgins to be entirely undateable.
After many hundreds of rejections, the Khajiit is often seen speaking in the middle of a local forum or plaza, issuing a mating call to marry women.
Although this is rarely answered.
I love you, Altmeri woman. I love you so much. I want to marry Altmeri woman in life. Thank you so much. Please marry me, dear, blonde and beautiful Altmeri woman. Thank you very much. I love you so much. I want to marry you. Being a pro-Altmeri, I am a Khajiit from Elsweyr.
The vast majority of those who live in Tamriel today absolutely dislike the Khajiit and simply can't stand the sight of them. But the Khajiit, in their endless cope and delusion, simply refuse to go back to the place they crawled out of. To the chagrin of others, the Khajiit stands in the middle of the local forum or plaza shouting fantastical claims about his fantasy superiority. In reality, the Khajiit can't even get your order correct at your local Muldagoth. The Khajiit are almost totally incompetent, and it's incredibly doubtful that they ever invented anything at all. One could hardly be blamed for casually assuming that all Khajiit are mentally ill delusional schizophrenics. Although the Khajiit lashes out at the world in anger, while sitting in the bedroom of his slum apartment, screaming at the wall, shouting like a small angry child throwing a temper tantrum, there is little to fear from this impotent rage. Despite its large population, due to the small stature and low IQ of the Khajiit, Elsweyr has only won 4 battles in its entire history, unless you count the battles won thanks to the Altmeri Dominion's army, where the Khajiit has achieved stunning success when placed on a level playing field. And impotent this rage is. With their declining environment and slovenly living standards, Elsweyr is fast becoming the impotence capital of the world. In addition to being impotent, the males of the Khajiit species are incredibly physically weak. In recent studies of grip strength, it has been shown that Khajiit men have a similar grip strength to Nord women from Skyrim. They are incapable of actually threatening anyone, as can be seen in the male Khajiit's complete lack of any fighting ability.
Perhaps one of the Khajiit's most interesting adaptations, though, is their incredible ability for self-delusion and cope.
Given they are of short stature, low intelligence, incredibly unattractive, have laughable physical strength, and are about as well endowed as the average 4-year-old boy of any other race, the Khajiit has much to cope about. A cope routinely employed by the Khajiit shows how naive he is. He will highlight the fact that many ebony and orichalcum mining companies are supervised by the Khajiit, and he will delude himself into thinking that this means he too is the supervisor of a company and also a successful mining mogul. even though in reality he is actually selling his own sister on the market for coin to buy a few bags of rice. Perhaps the most bewildering of the Khajiit's characteristics is their proclivity for tail wagging. Thought by some experts to be an expression of their deep inferiority complex, the Khajiit can often be seen wagging their tails when they talk. But nobody really knows why they display this bizarre behavior. In an attempt to compensate for their inferiority complex, the Khajiit developed a quote-unquote complex cultural structure, more commonly known as the caste system. This was done in the belief that calling himself civilized agrarian would make him somehow different than the other who knows how many million Khajiit on Nirn. In reality, nobody else can tell the difference. All Khajiit are exactly the same. Due to the caste system, endogamy, and arranged marriage, the Khajiit does not breed for looks, intelligence, or athletic ability. And this can be seen clearly when one looks at the average Khajiit. The males of the Khajiit species often display the stereotypical look known as the kitty cat phenotype, which is characterized by barely any abdominal body fat, comically short stature, and extremely low musculature. It could be speculated that many of the bizarre eccentricities of the Khajiit may be due to the combination of high rate of inbreeding and skooma consumption observed in Elsweyr. The fusion of inbreeding, skooma addiction, and toxic waste from the moon sugar creation process results in a high rate of birth defects. Although, given how dysgenic and misshapen the average Khajiit appears to be, it would be very difficult to tell if he was, quote-unquote, normal or not. In some cases, these birth defects lead to spectacular mutations, and could lead one to wonder whether the Khajiit was really a Daedra or not. Perhaps they could be vile chaos creatures from the void. I doubt even the infamous Daedric princes could have envisioned such horrors. These eldritch abominations and walking nightmares are the results of centuries of inbreeding and the highly toxic environment. And they are living proof that the Khajiit are beast folk mutants who should be purged from our Mother Nirn by righteous fire. The females of the Khajiit species are the most unattractive women on Nirn. Often cursed with completely ridiculous names, like Pushita, virtually everything about them is incredibly obnoxious. Many well-known figures have openly given their opinions on these creatures.
Khajiit women are the most repulsive, nauseating females in Tamriel.
I cannot disagree with that.
I can't remember any other creature I met through my campaigns that could give me the same distasteful feeling in my mouth similar to when I smell a Khajiit woman.
Yes, I can agree with that. Khajiit woman might be the worst of both worlds.
What do you mean by saying that they might be the worst?
Bitterly unhappy due to their poo-colored fur, they spend their days wishing they were Imperial or Nord women.
Too unattractive to date men from other races, many of these Khajiit females usually resort to marrying cats. However, given what the average Khajiit male looks like, this is entirely understandable. After such a hard and tortured existence on the streets of Elsweyr, these cats deserve to find love in the arms and beds of Khajiit women. And they are capable of loving these women in a way that no Khajiit male ever could, primarily due to the fact that these cats have far better personal hygiene, are more intelligent and also much more well-endowed than the average Khajiit. In an attempt to cope and adapt to this, many male Khajiit try to use alteration magic to change their looks. Much of the Khajiit's religion revolves around the worship of phallic objects. So it's only natural that he often tries to turn himself into an imperial male. After a lifetime of worshipping what he calls the main, it's almost second nature to him to love imperial sausage parties. This worship of a god with a large man part makes perfect sense when you consider the Khajiit only has a small peepee himself. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Given how effeminate the average Khajiit is, and given he is a complete failure of a man compared to males of literally any other race, excluding Breton males of course, it's unsurprising he's actually much better suited to be an Imperial. And with 6% of Elsweyr's population existing like this, there are almost 1 million Imperial Khajiit in Elsweyr today, making it the strangest country on Nirn. One variety of the Khajiit, known as the Stink, breeds exclusively with orcs. Have you ever seen a Khajiit-looking orc woman wearing a leash? No.
And you never will, because Khajiit-looking orc females do not exist. None of them are real.
Another type of the Khajiit is the Hurrah. This kind of Khajiit is a mentally ill sociopath who pretends to be a Dwemer.
Nobody ever believes him, though.
The Hurrah is probably the only thing that really was actually invented by the Khajiit. The Khajiit have been using alteration spells since the First Era, long before the Empire and the Septim Dynasty even existed. And although these Hurrah make up most of mental illness patients in Elsweyr, one thing is certain.
They will never be a real Dwemer.
The Khajiit often brag on public forums or plazas about how amazing they think their cuisine is compared to the foods of any other culture. However, most people find these incredibly dirty and unhygienic foods to be absolutely repulsive. These stinky and rotten horrors are probably partly responsible for the Khajiit's terrible body odor. Even though chimps understand how to use cutlery and utensils, most Khajiit do not, instead opting to eat off the floor. In Elsweyr, over 6,000 Khajiit die every year due to explosive diarrhea, and this is in large part due to these unsightly and filthy foods. Although, to be frank, it's quite hard to tell the difference between many of these gruesome meals and diarrhea. Primarily because for the most part they look and smell exactly the same. Many people say the Imperials must accept infinity Khajiit migrants into their civilized towns for this supposedly amazing exotic cuisine. However, when they repeat this tired cliché, this is the type of food they are talking about. Nobody would miss these culinary abominations, as this type of slop isn't even fit for animals. But for the Khajiit, this is their standard diet. Shockingly enough, though, these disgusting foods are hardly the worst things the Khajiit eat. The Khajiit love the taste and smell of lion urine and consider it holy. They drink lion urine and rub it all over their bodies and faces. The world is full of stories of the Khajiit bathing in urine, and they told these stories themselves. But if you talk about them, they fire into an incredible rage. They scream and cry and run to report you to the guards, angrily claiming you're spreading hate against Elsweyr. But the fact is, they're the ones that spread these stories of themselves drinking urine and rubbing it all over their faces. They're the ones that bragged on public forums and plazas, and they're the ones that enjoyed the taste and smell of urine. Bathing in urine and drinking it is part of the Khajiit's culture, and if they claim otherwise, they are lying. But then again, lying is part of their culture too. The fact is, they just love the smell and taste of piss, and you should never believe anything otherwise. The Khajiit love feces, and they brush their teeth with it, and use it as soap. The Khajiit sprinkle lion dung and urine all over their houses.
The Khajiit often use the excuse that they smear themselves in lion dung because it has antimicrobial properties. But so does soap.
And the Khajiit could trade with other countries that import soap and use that instead. But they don't, because poo plays an important and central part of their culture. because they love poo, they worship it, and it forms an integral part of their daily existence. And it is only when completely immersed in fecal matter that the Khajiit is ever really comfortable. Here, he is free from all judgment and his insecurities melt away. Here, he can finally relax and let go of all his worldly concerns. And here, immersed from head to toe in animal fecal matter, he can finally be himself. A Khajiit. To him, this is what it truly means to be the part of Elsweyr. This is home to him and where he belongs. And when he is not bathing in feces, and when he is not using it as toothpaste, the Khajiit also loves to eat it. In Elsweyr, the lion, called the mane, is considered holy, and the feces of the lion is considered a delicacy. Much like the character Mowgli from the novel Jungle Book, the Khajiit lacks the intelligence to understand fire. Although primitive man discovered fire way before the First Era, and this formed the foundation of modern civilization, the Khajiit today still struggles to grasp the basic properties of fire. More precisely, he lacks the intelligence to understand that fire burns, or specifically, that fire can burn him. Over 2,000 Khajiit burn themselves to death every single year. Although this is a depressingly low number, this natural selection by fire serves to cull the least intelligent of the Khajiit and leaves only the incredibly mediocre, ordinary Khajiit to pass on his defective genes and propagate the species. Once catching fire, he often runs around in circles, yelling about how Elsweyr will become a superpower, as though this will somehow persuade the fire to stop burning him. Predictably, this never seems to work. Another example of the Khajiit's mental weakness, often seen in the wild, water is the bane of the Khajiit. Too stupid to realize they can't swim, the Khajiit can often be observed drowning seconds after entering any body of water deeper than their knees. Over 5,000 Khajiit die in this manner every single year. Born with a sense of incredible delusion, the Khajiit often convinces himself that Elsweyr invented swimming and claims that it was stolen by the Imperials. He will proudly proclaim that Elsweyr is a swimming superpower before diving into the nearest body of water and subsequently drowning. Ironically, for many Khajiit, this is the closest most of them ever get to taking a bath. Famous for their terrible body odor, the Khajiit exudes a thick miasma around himself that wafts and lingers in the air behind him minutes after his physical presence has passed. Smelling strongly of sweat, skooma, dirty fur, and with a faint tinge of feces, the Khajiit has a uniquely offensive stench. So famous is this stench that when the people of forums and plazas mention Elsweyr or the Khajiit, they often invite the listener to imagine the smell. Lacking the intelligence to understand or use toilets, the Khajiit's favorite place to practice open defecation is at the nearest beach. He will do this in any country he travels to. Migrating herds of the Khajiit can often be seen defecating on the beaches of places such as Skyrim. If the Khajiit is unable to find a beach, he will defecate anywhere that is convenient. The side of the road, on the street, or even in the fountain, which is the only water source of his town. It doesn't matter to him. The Khajiit may claim this open defecation doesn't happen, but they are a race of scammers and liars.
You should never, ever believe a single word they say.
Much like fire and water, and also personal hygiene, the Khajiit cannot grasp the concept of magic. Although some Khajiit were given magical abilities by the creator, Todd Howard, and are capable of using it for basic purposes, they do not understand that magical spells can be miscasted or chained together. and due to their low IQ, they lack the spatial awareness to know where they are in proximity to a legendary magical object which might cause them to unleash another Daedric prince on the living world. They cannot understand that water reacts to the lightning spell called sparks, and this reaction can be used as a deadly weapon, and subsequently this can lead to deaths, much like in the movie Final Destination, where through a series of random mishaps the Khajiit are simultaneously shocked and drowned at the same time. Lacking the intelligence to understand the causal pathway between him, A. casting a spell while having no idea about anything, and B. getting shocked, and C. subsequently dying, the Khajiit often falls victim to electrocution. In the end, though, the death of any singular Khajiit is of little consequence in the grand scheme of things. They are rarely missed. The Khajiit are widely known for being some of the worst coachmen to ever exist. With their propensity to constantly scam, the vast majority of the Khajiit on the road are not qualified to ride a mule, let alone an Imperial Carriage. The Khajiit can be seen all over the known world, scamming every sort of license or qualification.
If you see a Khajiit doing any activity and claiming he is skilled or qualified, you can safely assume he is neither.
Having scammed himself a fake carriage driver license called the Coachman's license, the Khajiit heads to a civilized country. With his low IQ and powerful sense of delusion, he convinces himself that he is now a fully qualified carriage driver. Once on a carriage, the Khajiit instantly transforms from being mildly annoying to becoming a lethal threat to everyone around him. Given that the Khajiit was raised from birth to lie and cheat, it's virtually impossible for him to follow even the most basic rules. Even though primates, such as the noble orangutan, can learn to drive and could possibly even gain a license, the Khajiit still cheats anyway because it is in his nature to do so. Ultimately, it would probably be easier and safer to train orangutans to drive, and as a bonus, they are much more aesthetically pleasing than the unsightly Khajiit and have much better personal hygiene. However, if you were to suggest training orangutans to drive, most people would question your sanity. Ironically, these exact same people would approve of allowing Khajiit to drive, which is an absolutely terrible idea. A great mystery of nature is why, exactly, do people still insist on allowing the Khajiit to drive? Almost anyone with basic common sense could tell it's an absolutely terrible idea. But for some reason, they still insist on letting them do it regardless. Predictably, this leads to bad results. As hordes of the Khajiit leave carnage in their wake along the roadside, they also leave something else in their wake. Urban rumors are abound of the legendary designated pooping carriage. Long whispered about at the local forums or plazas or buried in the pages of old books, many people talk of Khajiit-driven carriages with holes cut into the seats. The urban legend says that the Khajiit cut these holes into the seats of their carriages so that they never have to stop driving, not even for toilet breaks. The hole allows them to defecate on the go, leaving a trail of fecal horror in their wake equal to the horror of the road fatalities caused by their terrible driving. If one remembers that the three pillars of culture and society of Elsweyr are robbing, scamming, and pooping, then, logically, there is only one other thing for the Khajiit to do after having scammed himself a coachman's license and then subsequently defecated all over the road. Robbing. Driving, and I use that term loosely, a carriage allows the Khajiit perfect camouflage to find unsuspecting victims to rob. Predatory Khajiit coachmen roam the roads of almost every major city in this world, ready to pounce on vulnerable victims at any time. The stories of Khajiit robbery victims are endless. The culture of the Khajiit revolves around scamming, robbing, and pooping. Every single path they take in life ends in one of these outcomes. When they aren't robbing, they're scamming. And when they aren't scamming, they're robbing.
The Khajiit is entirely incapable of any type of honesty and has absolutely no morals whatsoever.
Some people seriously believe the Khajiit becomes a totally different person once he leaves Elsweyr, as though by touching the magic soil of another country, he adopts a different value system.
The fact of the matter is, though, that the Khajiit will rob wherever they will go.
If there is a Khajiit anywhere in their proximity, women are moments away from getting robbed at any time. The Khajiit's urge to rob someone is almost as irresistible to him as his urge to scam. He is genetically hard-coded to rob at any cost. Again and again, these scenes play out across the known world.
This is a hold-up. Hand it over or die. We...
The Khajiit never, ever gives up trying to rob someone.
This is a holdup. Hand it over or die. Good choice.
Given the fact that the Khajiit is terrible at fighting and has less grip strength than the average Nord woman from Skyrim, he often finds more success adopting a method seen employed in the wild by the mallard duck: gang robberies. Many female adventurers who are stupid enough to travel to Elsweyr alone because they are unaware of the fact that it is the worst country to ever exist often fall prey to this method of robbery. If they cannot rob women, they will rob minors. Khajiit freaks hide in the shadows of every country they inhabit, looking for vulnerable minors to molest and rob. At a genetic level, the Khajiit is instinctually driven to rob. If he cannot rob women and he cannot rob minors, then he will even rob his own family. And if his family isn't available, then he will rob anything else he can. One of the favorite animals for the Khajiit to rob are stray dogs. There are tens of thousands of these dogs in Elsweyr, and the Khajiit simply grab their food off the street and run off with them into their slum dwellings. Even though the Khajiit supposedly worship lions, this doesn't stop them robbing them either. However, the brains of the Khajiit are so small that they usually take very little food from the lion, so little that he barely even notices he is being robbed. The Khajiit are known to rob lions, dogs, goats, chickens, dolphins, and many other animals. But perhaps the most famous incident of Khajiit animal robberies is the one involving a lizard, more precisely, an Argonian. In Sinkal, southern Elsweyr, 4 Khajiit invaded the house of an Argonian merchant and gang-robbed him. However, some animals have evolved ingenious methods to avoid being constantly robbed by the Khajiit. There had been rumors of something strange living up on these remote high slopes. Something that lived in burrows and only emerged every now and then to feed. A mysterious creature that has fled to these mountains to avoid being robbed. A scientific team went up to investigate. Due to their low IQ and their lack of physical strength, the Khajiit struggled to climb these steep slopes. What the scientific team discovered astonished everybody. A completely new and unknown species of reptile. An amazing and unique Pink Argonian. Until now, it was thought that all of the Pink Argonians were robbed into extinction. The Khajiit often rob the other types of Argonians, such as the Black Argonian that lives on the seashore,
and the Yellow Argonian that lives inland and is famous for its moist and wide cloaca, which is able to accommodate double penetration.
Studies carried out by actual scholars show that the tiny population of Pink Argonians diverged from its land Argonian cousins almost 5,000 years ago. So amazingly, it's been hiding up here all this time and has been unknown to science until now. And even more amazingly, it has never been the victim of extortion by a Dwemer slave master in the entire time it's been here. This burrowing adaptation has kept it safe for centuries. And of course, there is another great mystery that no one has yet explained. Nobody knows why exactly it's pink. Could it be that to be pink up here brings something good? We're unsure. Perhaps the pink color of their skin is what protects these lizards from being robbed and extorted. But it's still an unsolved mystery.
Again, we don't know. Goodbye.
In Elsweyr, the Khajiit are not the top of the food chain. Many animals are stronger and more intelligent. Heroic monkeys fight back and save miners from being robbed by the Khajiit. Much smarter and also with much better personal hygiene, monkeys completely outcast the Khajiit in combat. Lions, tired of being milked for their urine and feces by the Khajiit, fight back against the constant robberies. Bears, long hunted in Elsweyr for their delicious feces, stalk the Khajiit in the forests. Powerful leopards hunt the Khajiit in their slums. The Khajiit is never safe, and leopards can strike at any time. Anywhere the Khajiit tries to rob, the leopards will sniff him out and attack to drive him away. Stealthy leopards stalk the roads and paths of Elsweyr, taking down gangs on their way to commit robberies. And they hunt the Khajiit at the shore. Too stupid to know how to swim, the Khajiit is at constant risk of death anytime he gets close to water. The mighty elephants of Elsweyr battle the Khajiit in the fields and fight them where they work. They enter the slums to crush the Khajiit and stop him from trying to rob someone. It is said that elephants never forget. And it's well known they have the largest nose of any animal in the world. The stench of the Khajiit drives these noble creatures mad with anger. Even in crowds, the noise and smell of the Khajiit causes the elephant to strike out in anger and hate. The mighty tiger of Elsweyr, never one to be robbed, easily overpowers the Khajiit. After taking him down, it drags him away to consume his corpse, much like the many stray dogs of Elsweyr. A gruesome meal, which might be the last one. However, of all the myriad of creatures in Elsweyr, there is one that towers above all others, a super predator that knows no peer. When faced with such incredible power, the most the Khajiit can do is cower in awe before his imminent death. The Imperial Carriage. The mighty war cry of this creature strikes terror into the heart of every Khajiit. His senses dulled from years of coping in delusion, the Khajiit has no way to detect this monster coming. When the Khajiit ventures out for his thrice-daily journey to his ritual defecation grounds, he is at constant risk of being attacked by Imperial carriages. Silent and deadly, they can strike at any time. With his limited IQ, the Khajiit is unable to draw an association between carriages and the paved roads, so he has no idea when or where a carriage might appear. From the very second he leaves his slum dwelling, his life is in constant danger. Some Khajiit attempt to fight the carriage and drive it away from their sacred dung stockpiles, but they are no match against such an unstoppable force of nature. With no visual cues, no warning signs, and no idea where or when a carriage will appear, and no ability to detect one coming, the Khajiit is easy prey for this majestic predator. Virtually invisible in the dense jungle, the Khajiit has no way to dodge the lightning-fast attacks of this master predator. Like an eagle, it focuses on the Khajiit from high above, swooping to snatch him away for an easy meal. Unstoppable, undetectable, and almost invisible to the naked eye, the mighty Imperial Carriage stalks across Elsweyr, leaving a trail of carnage and confusion in its wake. The Khajiit gather on cold nights around the fires of their trash heaps and tell their offspring stories of this mythical beast, the Imperial Carriage, the stuff of nightmares. But even in their wildest tales, they cannot adequately describe the beast. No living Khajiit has ever seen an Imperial Carriage in the flesh. Because by the time the Khajiit realizes the carriage is coming for him, he is already dead. Such a ruthless and efficient predator of the Khajiit in greater numbers, the Imperial Carriage could single-handedly bring the population of the Khajiit down to a more tolerable level overnight. Sadly, these solitary creatures rarely find time to mate with a partner. They must feed constantly to meet their caloric requirements. They hunt the Khajiit 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, leaving a trail of death and gore in their endless hate and bloodlust. Although these animals fight back against the Khajiit, they can barely thin their numbers. The Khajiit continues to breed out of control and spread across Tamriel like a plague of locusts. Eventually, if they are not stopped, the Khajiit will destroy everything we hold dear. The world will fall into darkness and everything will become Elsweyr. Everything will become Khajiit.
And nobody wants that.
It's not too late to stop this terrible fate.
Right now, we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale. Our greatest threat in thousands of years. If we don't take action, the collapse of our civilizations and the extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon.
We are facing nothing less than the collapse of the living world. The very thing that gave birth to civilization. The thing we rely upon for every element of the lives we lead. No one wants this to happen. None of us can afford for it to happen. So, what do we do? Well, it's quite straightforward. It's been staring us in the face all along. To restore stability to this world, Todd Howard must restore its biodiversity, the very thing that he's removed. It's the only way out of this crisis he has created. He must rewild this world. Rewilding this world is simpler than he might think, and the changes he has to make will benefit all of us and the generations that follow. A century from now, this world could be a wild place again, and I'm going to tell you how.
Drop the nuke.
In the end, after a lifetime exploration of the living world, I'm certain of one thing. This is not just about saving this world.
It's about saving ourselves.